Hello, everyone. We hope that you enjoyed your films that you just watched. My name is Holli Wagner, and I am on the board of directors for the McMinnville Short Film Festival. I will be your host for a bit strange experimental category. We are going to be doing a Filmmaker Q&A, and we have such a wonderful crowd here of excellent filmmakers. And first, let me welcome all of the filmmakers. We actually have some people from as far as Australia, Austria, and Spain. So we are very excited. This is something that you can't do necessarily when you're in, face to face. So being in the virtual world that we are in right now, we get this pleasure of having all of these people together. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to go around and ask some very specific questions around certain films, and then from some of the directors. And then we will go and do a round robin of a couple of other questions that will come up. So to start with, I think I will start with Susan. Susan, I wanted to ask you about what was your inspiration? This story was pretty fantabulous, and so I would really love to hear how you came up with this idea.
Great. I'm a bit nervous being the first person, but hi everybody. And let me know if my Wi-Fi gets a bit wobbly because I can move within my house. Okay, so I work with a wonderful actress called Lauren Bailey, and she is. She often gets cast as, the girlfriend or the mother. And she said to me, I really want to do a role that's kind of against type. So I was just sort of, I always have like a million ideas, and I was quite keen to do something. Well, I thought it'd be quite amusing because she's quite, how do I say this in a good way? Quite girly, I suppose. So I wanted to perhaps give her a role where she was a bit more, butch or hard. And so this idea just kind of started to evolve. And I've always been really fascinated with just over the years as I've aged, and also just I've worked in IT a lot. So I've worked with a lot of young guys, and I was always really interested in how people are perceived, how we're perceived by how we look, So I just had this idea where the main character, I know people, you guys have seen the film. So Vlad is this very tough criminal, and so he's perceived in a certain way in the world, and most people are kind of just scared of him because physically he's scary. So the idea was if he's put inside a different body, which isn't scary, how would he cope with that? So that was kind of the first thinking that I was doing with trying to come up with the idea. So is that sort of...
That's perfect.
Is that enough for the moment?
Yeah. That's perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. John, so your story was sort of documentary kind of, very, it was a great film. I'm trying to understand if it's something is real or if it's something that you came up with. So I'd love to know two things from you. Is it real? Is it something you came up with? And also, if it's real, do you still celebrate the holiday?
Hi, I'm really glad that that's your impression. That was my intention. So Februarium, the holiday, is as real as any other holiday, I suppose. I have been celebrating since 2007. I do have a chunk of an old Christmas tree in my kitchen currently, and I will be bludgeoning it ritualistically next month, or this month. And so I do celebrate it. It's a lovely thing to do during a notoriously terrible month. February, it's dark and the holidays are over, and Valentine's Day is not that great. And so it's sort of a nice bright spot in that part of the year.
Well, I love that. Now we also have the film festival, right? Our film festival in February as well. So right along with your Februarium. Excellent, thank you. Fernando, let's talk to you. This was an incredible interpretation, this film. Please talk to us about the complexity behind the technical aspects of doing this film.
Well, yeah, I mean, this film was shot entirely underwater in open sea during in between Ibiza and in Mediterranean Sea. So it was mid-October because on summer it's quite packed, it's busy. And thing is, we were running against time because we didn't use any lighting whatsoever. And the problem was, like, she was absolutely like she was naked completely, and we had to use some lead weights for her to drown, because we were shooting all day long, since like 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. because of the sun. And the problem was the condition because it's quite exhausting filming. And myself, I was using like 8 tanks of nitrox, which is a different kind of mixture for the tank, where you can last longer. And they called the currents all the problem with because she was naked again, with the jellyfishes and everything. We had to be quite careful, because she could get like harmed with anything at all. And the other problem was, like, when you go free diving and you breathe air from a tank, and then you take it away, and then you go up, your lungs get expanded. So in any time that she was getting quite, I mean, she's an athletic woman, but any moment, like, you go a bit stressed and you go up, your lungs may suffer quite, like some people say explode, or sometimes a tiny bubble of nitrogen or something running in your body will expand, and you can have stroke and die. So that was terrible, because she was freezing, she was cold, she was tired. And yeah, I mean, that was the toughest part of the scuba diving. It's quite demanding, and there's so many hazards all around the thing. And yeah.
That is fascinating, because you know, I mean, when you think about it, how you have to handle all of that, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that. So let's talk about from Abram, Here Rest Butterflies. There's an ambiguity of the film that left me wondering, you know, who was gone. And I am curious about sort of what drove that storyline for you, and maybe if you could talk about that.
Okay, the story originated from a tale of sorts that my father told me when I was about 8, and he sat me down and he told me he was going to inform me how to hold a woman. And I was pre-puberty and I had no idea what he was talking about. And he put his hand out like this, and he just looked at me in the eyes for a really long time. It was a very classic moment in my childhood. And he said, that's how you hold a woman. And he said that a woman is like a butterfly, and if you grasp her, you will crush her wings. And that's the thing that attracts a man to a woman in this heteronormative way. This is going to delete the thing that you want from her, which is her alive spirit. So don't do that. And he went on, just, you have to stay strong and be bold, but again, not possessive in this way. So that's how this film originated. And it's really based on how our pasts inform the decisions we make in the present. And it's a lot about, again, this idea that we can actually hold someone in an open way. That's the inspiration and the kind of trajectory of the film. There is, to be clear, there is a probably about 35-minute screenplay for a larger film, and this is a mood piece of sorts. So it's kind of designed to keep you hopefully a little curious and to be somewhat ambiguous on purpose. So it's a standalone, again, concept reel or mood piece, but it points towards an entire film that I'm hoping to get more exposure for through some of these film festivals.
Excellent. That was then it did its job, because I love hearing the background story. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
Okay.
So let's go on and talk to Dean. Pool service announcement. I loved when you compared it to crack. So maybe you can talk to me a little bit about why, what drives someone to do a film about this? And also, are you a skateboarder or a bicyclist?
Yeah, so I guess what inspired the story, stemming back to when I was a kid during the Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan era. She created the Just Say No campaigns. And so watching some of those anti-drug commercials really, had its impact on me. And so the commercial where the gal's diving into the empty swimming pool, I just kind of had my take on it as far as BMX, bike riding, and skateboarding. And then we used some of the audio tidbits from inspired from some of those anti-drug campaigns to kind of have a theme to the film. And I've been riding backyard pools for over 20 years now, all over the States and then internationally in Sydney, Australia. So yeah, it was just a fun project. This is something that's a big part of who I am as a person, seeking out and riding backyard pools. And I've done a number of different formats with that. And I was given the Super 8 camera, and a lot of that energy came back because I teach photography at Fort Vancouver High School Center for International Studies. And in today's age, we see everything so polished. But when you see 16 millimeter film or Super 8 millimeter film, it really has this raw, organic feeling. And that was exciting. So I wanted to bring some of that excitement back to my creativity and in media in general.
That's great. Thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. So Charly Wenzel from Pause, the movie Pause. And you are from New York City? Yes. Correct? Wow. Just wow. I was struck by how the message around this and the dance was so much about how we feel it in our bones, and how everyone used their physical body to express in this film. How did you select the participants, and what was it like? I'm assuming that this was done during COVID?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe you could talk a little bit about both, how you selected participants and the filming.
Sure. So yeah, I created Pause during the lockdown here in New York back in April. And I just had that urge to connect to other artists and to create something to really cope with what was going on. It was such a big shock to the system, to everybody. And I was specifically thinking about all the artists all around the world who were locked inside, not able to perform and practice their craft. And it was just really hard to know like where to put your energy, right? So I knew I needed this creative outlet. I needed a purpose, and that's just like my coping mechanism. And I think for a lot of artists, that's how we cope with major life events. We put them into our art to express ourselves. So I wanted to create a platform for artists to express how they were feeling during this time, really their state of being locked inside, being isolated, all this uncertainty of what was going on. So I just put out a call for dance artists originally to send just very quick, short 10-second videos of themselves, expressing themselves during this time. And then I decided to open it up to artists of different genres. So I opened it up to photographers, to poets, to painters, to musicians. And it was just really an open call on social media, and the submissions just started coming in. And I felt very selfish doing this project, because it really gave me so much life during this time to see everybody expressing themselves in so many different ways. And it was really beautiful to be able to connect to people. And there were artists, over 40 artists from over 10 countries, who sent me their submissions. And from that, I created this collage. So I can't really say I'm the director of this movie. I say I'm the creator, because the movie really has like over 30 directors. But it was just so satisfying. And everybody, was so happy to have this creative outlet during this difficult time.
That is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it definitely was felt, just from my own perspective of, being in lockdown. And I think everyone will feels that, when from that perspective. So now I'd like to move on to Viktor from Austria. Lacrimosa is the film. A completely beautiful, emotional film. Maybe you can also, this film was also done with an aspect of being underwater. Maybe you could share with us some about the filming aspect, but also talk to us about the emotional elements behind it.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone from Austria. First of all, it's really great to be here, and especially during those times that you guys are making this happen for us filmmakers to show our films, to get in touch with each other. I know how much work this is to put a festival together. So thank you for that, first of all. Our film Lacrimosa, I have to say hi from Tanya, our director. She couldn't make it today. So I'm here. And we shot Lacrimosa partly underwater. That's correct. It's an 18-minute film, as you have seen, and about half of it was shot underwater. So basically, the film is a story about loss, and it's about a tear and what happens inside a tear. So every tear is shed for a certain reason, and in this case, it's about loss and losing someone. What was really interesting is finding a way to express this loss or tell a story of a tear, us being inside of the tear. So at that point, the element of water came into place, and Tanya had the idea to actually use the underwater aesthetics on our actors, not just like in Aquaman or whatever, where they shot basically sometime after us, but they shot in a studio and just made it look like underwater. But we actually, as Fernando obviously did, we went to shoot underwater, but we were not so brave to shoot in the ocean. Austria is somewhere in the middle of the Alps, so we don't have an ocean really. So our choice was to go in a deep diving pool where we shot underwater using green screen behind the actors, and then using visual effects to put the actors and they're acting inside the desert in Namibia, basically, in the Death Valley. It circles all around this tree. So basically, we had about 6 days of underwater shoot and a few more days of regular shoot in the forest and in the apartment. So this was stretched over a few shooting blocks to make this work. We did a lot of research, like when the actors put the regulators out, they had to get rid of the air in the mouth and in the nose. So there were no bubbles coming out when they were emulating to talk. Obviously, the whole film was dubbed afterwards. And was a very interesting experience. Also to get the pool filters set in a way that the eyes don't get red after a few days being underwater with the chlor. I think it's called chlor as well. So there were a lot of things to take into account with the soft lights, because we had the concept already, obviously, and we want to make it work in post-production. But then again, if you do a very soft light, you don't have you have to rotoscope a lot, especially with blonde hairs. So it was a quite a journey. It took us, I want to say, 3 years to make the film, including post-production.
Wow.
And then it was another 1.5 years of a marvelous festival run, and we even made it into the long list of the Oscars a year ago. And so it's really great that this film is still out there and still people are watching it on festivals, and there's recognition coming back. So this is really amazing, actually. So thank you.
Well, I was honored to watch it, most definitely. It was a fantastic film. I kept thinking, you know, every time if you just froze every frame, it would be a beautiful artistic photograph, you know, just so beautifully done. So thank you for that. So I'm going to move on to Joey from the Remnants. Can you talk about the emotion behind the film? And you know, if it's tied to the isolation of COVID?
Hello. It's actually kind of funny. I guess the basic concept came up after, like, when I moved, because I moved from California to Oregon, and so I made a bunch of short films and stuff when I was in California, but in Oregon I hadn't made a project for a couple of years. So I was trying to think of something really simple that I could do on my own with people that I know around me. And so I kind of came up with this concept, and I actually started shooting it like years before COVID happened, but I didn't really like start editing it until after, like during COVID. So it was kind of like a surreal thing to be working on a project that has kind of a post-apocalyptic vibe, but then actually be in a pandemic. So I would say, if anything, I feel like a lot of the more emotional stuff came through when I started working with the guy who, like Tristan, who worked on the score with me, or he did the score for me. And it just kind of gave it a more ambiguous and kind of darker undertone than initially planned, but actually started working a lot better for the film. But yeah, I would say that was definitely more of that kind of developed more of like the emotional spirit of not only just the world, but then also what the main characters going through. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely felt it. Yeah. So Lisa Gold, I'm going to go to you from Los Angeles, Thoughts and Prayers. Wow. I mean, really just had no idea where it was going. It could be played over and over and over again. And so maybe you could talk to us a little bit about sort of how you came up with the idea, and just share with us a little bit about what you guys went through creating this film, because it's got to be a challenge for these actors to actually read the lines. That's all I kept thinking is oh my God.
Yes, it was very, very hard to strike the tone, actually. I'm very passionate about, as we all are, I'm sure, about the fact that gun violence is ubiquitous in our country. And we're so numb to it. And I just wanted to make a film that got underneath that a little bit. And I actually was about to shoot my own anti-gun violence short. I was 5 days from shooting when my friend Terry Rossio, he's quite a famous writer. He wrote the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He dropped this on my lap and he said, well, if you know anybody that would want to shoot this. And I'm like, what? This script is so clever. Yes, I'm in. And I didn't actually manage to shoot it on, 5 days later, because as you know, there's a classroom full of children that I had to pull together. But I did it about a week after that. As a director, the challenge for me was to get my actors to have the right tone of irony And I did, we did a lot in our casting sessions. So I knew I was casting actors who could do it. And I guess the toughest one was the little girl and the little boy, because children are just naturally, there is no irony in their world. Everything unfolds in a very logical way. And so they don't have a sense of the undercurrents that go on in things. So yeah, I had the trick for me with the little girl was to I had to get her to think of something sad but not too sad. So I started with, imagine if your grandma died, and her mother's like, no, she doesn't care about her grandma. Shopping, that's the key. So it was, imagine if it was something like, her favorite store was whatever the kid version of Urban Outfitters was. And I said, well, imagine if your store is closing. And so that's the look on her face as she leaves the classroom. That's what she was thinking about.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. So on to Clear Creek, and we have two people with us here. So I want to recognize both Ellen Smith and Kate Elias. So I don't know who to ask, but Kate, maybe you can tell me, how did you decide to tell this story in this fashion? I was just, if you would just explain that to us. It was a great way of expressing the story.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, we really have a third person that we should honor here, who's Tori Lawrence, who's our cinematographer, and she did, the lion's share of the work of actually putting this film together. But the story originated as a contemporary dance duet, a live performance that we've been working on for many, many years. Ellen and I went to college together, and we kind of started working on this project, and it's taken on many different forms, but all sort of in a live, like, dance performance context. And then at a certain point, it just felt, we had the theme throughout was this idea of the West. I grew up in Utah. I live in Washington State. And Ellen has spent time out in the American West in various capacities. And so we both kind of have this fascination for what it is, what it means to our country and to our culture and to ourselves personally. And so all of those themes were kind of coming out in our dance. And then we thought, it would be really interesting to actually go there. We were doing all these things in kind of the gallery spaces and performance halls, and it's kind of like, well, there's like something missing here. And we had this amazing opportunity to go out for a residency with the UCross Foundation, which is in Wyoming. And Tori came with us, and we kind of set the movement that we had worked on for so long on the land. It became kind of reordered. It was not the same narrative as it was before, but because it was really dictated by this place that we were in and the new possibilities that it provided. So really, I think that the space and the land and film as a new medium for what we had been working on really kind of created a whole new piece.
Awesome. Well, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I couldn't tell. Sometimes they were horses. Sometimes they seemed like children playing. Sometimes it was all across the board, and it was lovely. It was wonderful. Okay, so now I'd like to go on to Todd Carter out of New York City, I believe. 7 Prayers on Honey on Earth. It was so lovely and so strange. I'm just curious sort of how you came up with this idea. It's very artistic and lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. So I'm primarily a musician. have had a career here in the city for the past 20 years as a songwriter and composer, and have done more and more TV music. And so this film really arose out of a series of songs that started to appear to me, sitting at the piano and tinkering around. And my research for songs sometimes leads me down these really interesting rabbit holes. And I ended up in a rabbit hole at a certain point with this phrase that was supposedly attributed to the goddess Ariadne in this script that predates the Greek language called Linear B. And the first line of this script was, "To all the gods, honey." And it just stuck in my soul. And I started to compose a song out of this. And as I sat with it, and I sat with this character of Ariadne, I started to see other mythological characters start to show up, like Saturn, and some characters from Sufi spiritual literature. And when these would come and visit me, I would sit at the piano and start developing melodies. And eventually I found the main character who was being sung to in the film. She's known as the flagellant. She's somebody that's been beating herself up over a number of years, and the characters in the film are offering these songs and these prayers to help her get out of this, let's call it a funk. So really kind of stream of consciousness, you know, the film really arose out of these musical notes that initially appeared to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. This is it. Karen Leo, this is it. How fun. This film was fun, and it kind of went all over the place. And the different stories. I love the salad bowl. That was great. And the piece about the woman who, with the white bag shop, you know, that was awesome. Can you talk about kind of, well, you know, how you went into this, and maybe some of the challenges?
I'm primarily an artist, a visual artist, and I consider myself more video art oriented, but I try to get away with being a filmmaker when I can, when someone wants to give me that opportunity. So these pieces were pieces of writing that I had done, and sort of was practicing getting back into animation techniques. So these were all sort of, I've been using different characters, new performance kind of stuff, puppets, animation, in a lot of short video pieces before. And this one, the writing came first, actually. And I had all these images and ideas and drawings that I wanted to put together. So the way each story was told of these three kind of came out of a drawing process and sort of animating them. And to me, they make sense to me how they go together, but that's just me probably. There's a thread between them, and I kind of loop in the Kenny Loggins because I like that song. I'm not gonna lie, I like Kenny Loggins fine, and I like the sort of very upbeatness of that song. And like, if you listen to the lyrics, it is a bummer. It is just like, you're done, you're over, like you forget it. But he sings it with this gorgeous hair and this gusto, and you know, the light coming out of his body and stuff. So to me, these are just kind of like observational sketches about people doing the most banal things possible, and them kind of linking together in sort of like a sad little portrait of how we go through our lives, but fun.
Well, thank you. That was fantastic. That's good to get some insight there. That's really great. So we're going to go through and do a little bit of a lightning round. And I'm going to start with Dean. What was the most courageous decision you or your crew made during production?
It's a great question. Shooting Super 8, it's just, you know, you pick up these cameras that are, you know, decades old, and sometimes even after a camera test, you can have malfunctions. And I think that was the most challenging piece to it, to where you'll do a camera test, the shutter's working great, the camera's working great, the film came back awesome, and then you shoot for a summer, and then you come back and you're like, what is going on? And so I think I shot 3 different cameras all together, And that was the consequences that those are the consequences. Those are the challenges in shooting with a format that is sometimes unpredictable, even, using a really nice light meter. And that's just some of the challenges that we have. And then obviously seeking out backyard pools, a lot of times we get kicked out at these locations. I flew all the way to Sydney, Australia in hopes of finding, discovering, and riding backyard pools internationally. And luckily enough, we rode a number of pools and connected with a great crew. So it's a very organic project. This is something that I'd be doing on my own, but having a fun theme to go along with it, and then shooting with a format that, it's obviously becoming a lot more popular with music videos and just different work in general, the resurgence of Super 8. So I guess the biggest challenges and some of the biggest risks were outside of the bike riding and skateboarding as is. Super 8, there's always challenges and film not exposing correctly and cameras not working correctly, but that's the beauty of it. And I'm really glad that we decided to shoot it in Super 8.
Great, thank you. How about you, Charly, with Pause?
Challenges, the biggest challenge? That's that
biggest challenge. Yep.
So I think for me, it was getting submissions from all these artists who all have their own very individual artistic voice, but then putting it together in a cohesive film. I think that I felt the responsibility to do everybody justice and to have something cohesive at the end, which the music helped a lot. Like I had, I think 5 different musicians working on the music across the globe from different countries. And the music really guided me so much in how to put everything together. But that's probably the biggest challenge I had.
Thank you. Joey, how about you with Remnants?
I would say in the beginning, it was trying to figure out what location to shoot for some of the empty city scenes. It was there was kind of a debate about whether to go to actual abandoned locations, but I ended up because again, this was before the initial lockdown and everything happened. I just woke up super early and went to the city and shot locations there. But occasionally you'd still have to worry about people coming in or just, but I also wanted to make sure that the city somewhat looked like it was still functional, even though it was still abandoned. So just trying to find that, I would say was probably the most difficult to get that tonally correct.
That's great. Thank you. Viktor, Lacrimosa?
Well, I mean, artistically speaking, creating this Dali-esque dream world and still staying true to the story on one side, and of course, I mean, the actors had to train for 6 months to make it work underwater. But in regards of decisions and challenges, I mean, the whole project was a challenge, but this was, from a production point of view, at least a great thing, obviously. We actually went back to the forest and made some reshoots half a year into editing because we decided to cut away a few things we have been shooting and rearrange the story in the first part of the film before she actually goes underwater to make it more on point. And of course, this meant getting everyone back together, flying an actress back from Berlin to Austria, finding the spots in the wood we've been shooting a year ago, and all that. So that took some time, but overall, I think it was absolutely worth it. And then the ultimate decision was going for a final festival master and final master of the film in actual black and white, because we have been shooting and we have been compositing and post-producing in color, as you can see behind me a little bit. And then we all decided, the P director and myself, we decided to go for a more classy, more dream-esque, I want to say, look in black and white. We had a long discussion. We asked a lot of people. We made test screenings. We asked around, are you dreaming in color or are you dreaming in black or white? And that was interesting process. Yeah.
Well, definitely well worth it, as you said, both the water and the study of black and white. Susan, how about you with Agender?
Yeah, we really wanted the location that we got, which is there's a university in Melbourne called RMIT, and it's got this fantastic. It's got a really strong architecture department. So I knew this building. I've been in there a few times. I taught a little bit there, and we just couldn't get it for a really long time. And then when we were given approval to get the space we shot in, we only had one day. So we sort of had 3 different locations that we had to dress within this quite large space. And we ended up, I suppose I was just thinking when you asked this question, we had the doctor, we got so behind in our schedule that we had the doctor for 1 hour. So we just ended up shooting all his stuff in 1 hour, hoping that they were, talking against the other actor, that would be able to cut it all together sort of okay. And it seemed to work, which was good. And then we had one of the crew be a back stand-in for him. So probably usual short filmmaking stuff that a lot of people understand. But we were really thrilled to get this space because we wanted something that looked quite futuristic and sort of uber modern, I suppose. So that's our story, I think.
Excellent. Thank you. Kate, would you like to talk about yours?
Sure. I think from a sort of filmmaking perspective, the figuring out the voices that we would include through the interviews that we did with folks that we met, and sort of figuring out that layer, because the visual stuff is pretty abstract and then the voices are so concrete. And so we wanted to figure out a balance between kind of creating a narrative, but not making it too sort of beginning, middle, end. And then on another level, something that I think a challenge that we just are always going to grapple with that we haven't kind of concluded and won't ever is that, we're 2 white women out in this place that is now inhabited by white people, but is stolen land from the tribes that are still there. And to figure out how we present this piece that we're really interested in and we love, but also like, do we have the right to do that? And do we how do we make sure that we're doing this in a respectful way? I don't know, it's kind of like always in our minds as we embark on this, and like, are we entitled really to tell our story, or it's a complicated question, and I think it's something that we're just always going to grapple with.
Right. Ellen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think Kate really got it, that, yeah, it's just a question, and that everybody in this, Q&A right now is dealing somewhat with the question of representation, and whose stories are we telling? Are they our own? Are they someone else's stories? And if so, how do we do that respectfully and with humor and and respect mostly? And so that was a big question for us, especially that we were coming into a community where we were both also just visitors to the community itself. And how do we create a portrait that sort of reflects like our time there and our experience there, and also the people and the places that we saw in a way that feels respectful and equitable if possible.
Sounds like you guys might have a second follow-up film there. Clear Creek 2. Lisa, maybe you could tell me from thoughts and prayers.
I guess it was a bit of a risk to, we shot the scene with the college students in the central quad of the college that I am taking classes at. It wasn't we had a permit, I was in a class at the college, but it was wide open on, all 4 sides, and with our, not skeleton crew, but it was a challenge, to try to talk people out of walking through our shots on a hot day in the sun, making them stand there and wait. And then, of course, the second challenge was with a classroom full of children, keeping their energy level up. That I love that. That was really fun. Just dealing with the kids. They were so enthusiastic, and I think they could have gone for many hours more than we had them. They loved it.
Excellent. Thank you. Karen, how about for This Is It?
Animation's a real pain in the ass, and it takes a long time, and it's frustrating. It's really fun, but doing it at home when you got kids and a full-time job and a table in your apartment, you know, there's challenges, but it's worth it.
Awesome. Thank you. Fernando, for Casiopea.
Shooting underwater obviously is quite rough and very, very, the entire project, as Viktor said, and everyone saying, the entire project, it was quite a challenge. But for me, in the end, was sticking, being faithful to the script, to the story, and having this timeless woman in this story with no dialogue whatsoever, with no anything at all to interact with apart from the water, and keep your attention and stay faithful to the story, and such a deep story that touches everyone, no matter your political, sexual, religious orientation. Doesn't matter. It's like it touches every human being. For me, that was the most challenging thing, being faithful to the story.
Well, it was great. Thank you. Todd?
You know, inviting the artist that did the body paint, you'll see when you watch the film, or you'll see it, you know, those who have seen it now, some of the characters are painted, and painted with this substance called honey and caustic. And I had just met this person and fallen in love with his work, and we'd gone back and forth about how to do it on bodies. He was doing it more on bodies. And we didn't have a chance to experiment with it beforehand. It was like he needed to fly in right when we were shooting, paint the bodies, and then leave. And it ended up being a great decision to do that, even though it was really risky.
And beautiful. Thank you. Abram, Here Rest Butterflies. Tell us.
Okay. I would say the most challenging part of the film for me personally was directing and acting in it at the same time, and giving up control of kind of the emotionality and direction of some of the scenes. So I guess one of the most challenging and obviously the most enlivening was walking into a cold Oregon lake and trying to be unflinching, because this character in this moment is so despondent that he's just kind of checked out. And it was chilly. We got up to about my waist, and if you look real close, you can watch some eyebrows go like this, but did pretty well overall. And I had my friend there with the GoPro, and this was very low budget. I had most of my friends volunteering to work. So this is really kind of, to use a pun, kind of getting my feet wet with the fiction filmmaking part of things. And I'm excited for the next adventure.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And John, with you, Februarium.
Karen, you said it. You nailed it, huh? Doing animation at home is kind of tough, and in general, but I had to abandon a largely built set when COVID lockdown happened in the UK. And then, so this film was shot in my living room and kitchen. But that was maybe not the biggest challenge. One of the biggest ones was sourcing bread flour for the biscuit puppet, because it was all sold out. There was, a run in the grocery store, so I had to order it and wait a hot minute, and then not mess it up too many times. And I did keep eating the puppets as they were coming out because they were delicious. But we got the shot, so that was it.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. That was a great segue, a great place to end here. Thank you for that good laugh. I want to thank everyone for being here, and thank our viewers as well for helping us to celebrate this 10-year anniversary for the McMinnville Short Film Festival. We are super excited to have you all here and participate. Please check the schedule and tune in for more wonderful films, and then join us for the live awards ceremony on Sunday, February 28th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you again to all of you and for such wonderful films.